Good afternoon and welcome back to Teacher Tip Tuesday. I'm Clara Galan, Content Marketing Manager and former teacher here at Remind, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for our 18th Teacher Tip Tuesday. So for those of you who are just tuning in, Teacher Tip Tuesday is a 5-minute professional development series in which we interview educators from around the world to discuss innovative and creative classroom practices and communication strategies and share their ideas with the Global Professional Learning Network. So today I'm really excited to be joined by Dani Raskin, who is a special education teacher from Clarkstown High School South in New York State. Hi Dani, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi Clara, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
We're excited too. We'd love to learn a little bit more about you and your work with your students. So how long have you been teaching at your school?
I have been teaching for 5 years officially. I was a teaching assistant for 2 years before that, so I've been in my district for 7 years total.
Awesome. So what's, like one practice, activity, or strategy that you've been trying out with your students lately?
This is super new, but as of about 2 weeks ago, I have been trying flipped instruction, and so I've tried to flip a lot of my lessons, and that has been going really, really well. It's really exciting, and the kids are so psyched to watch the videos. They come in the next day, and they love teasing me about the mistakes that I make, or so far in every video, I've actually been eating a snack, and they love that, and I wear kind of silly costumes sometimes, so that's been really awesome. And then the other thing that I like to do a lot is back channeling, using either Today's Meet or Padlet, any way that I can get a kind of side conversation going outside of the actual learning. As long as my students are interacting with me and each other and we're having those conversations, then it's successful. So those have both been hugely impactful in my classroom this year.
That's really cool that you're flipping your classroom. I know a lot of teachers that are trying to get started with it, and sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. Do you have any advice for teachers that are flipping their classroom for their first time, or any first steps or resources you would recommend?
Yeah, so Twitter has been the best resource. Just reaching out to people that are already flipping. I've joined a lot of Twitter chats and just asked questions. I think my thing was taking that initial leap. And I was so afraid to sit down and film a video, and I was worried about how to do it. But totally take that leap and jump in and do it, and you'll probably make mistakes, and it will probably feel really awkward at first, but it's totally worth it because the kids are so excited about it, and it's something that is so different because it's so student-driven. So they go home and they're much more excited to see me on their computers and their phones than they are to see me in class. And then we can kind of come in the next day and talk about it. So my biggest piece of advice would just be totally go for it. There are lots of blogs out there, lots of people that are on Twitter that are absolutely willing to help, and I'm definitely willing to help anyone in any way that I can.
That's great. I'm curious to hear, how have you been using your classroom time then? So I know since students get a lot of the content outside of class, what are some ways that you've been making it more student-centric and engaging during your class time?
That has been the biggest struggle for me. And not that it's been a struggle, but you have to be so much more creative and so much more innovative when you are flipping your instruction, because you do have to figure out what the most efficient and effective use of your classroom time is. So for me right now, a lot of that is kind of figuring out what the misunderstandings or misconceptions are about the videos that the kids watched at home. So it is a lot of going through and answering questions. And one thing that I've done is a lot of kind of project-based learning, and the kids really love the opportunity to use that in-class time to collaborate with one another and try out different tech tools rather than sitting and listening to your standard everyday lecture, which a lot of teachers usually do. So that's, for now, how I've been using my classroom time, and as I get more comfortable with flipping, hopefully I will figure out other practices that work really well that the kids love and that I enjoy also.
Awesome. So, speaking of communication and, keeping your students in the loop and answering their questions both in and outside of the classroom, I know that you have many methods. You're, using a lot of tech for staying in touch with your students. And I also know that you've been using Remind quite a bit. So, what's one way that you've been using it, and how has it made an impact in your classroom?
Remind has completely changed everything about my classroom. For me, like mentally, mostly knowing that I have a way to communicate with my students even when I'm at home, and I remember, you know, I have to tell them to look at this particular slide on a PowerPoint, or they have to make sure that they have to study for a quiz that's coming up. It gives me that peace of mind and that security of knowing that I don't have to wait until the next day to communicate with them. So that's how I've really been using it outside of class. In the classroom, it's been really great to send out quick links to them on if we are doing something with back channeling. I can just shoot that right to them using the app, and I don't have to go through like type in this in your phone or in whatever your device is. So it's definitely opened the doors for that connectivity with my students, and then hopefully next year I will be more connected with parents, because that's definitely something I'd like to incorporate into my classroom as well. But it really has made a world of difference, and I'm like the world's biggest Remind advocate.
I'm so glad to hear that it's making such a positive impact in your classroom. And I know you mentioned, you know, that it functions across all devices. So are most of the students in your classroom BYOD?
Most of them are. A few of them are not, but we've kind of found ways around that because you guys have the feature where they are able to get emails. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of the students do bring their own devices to school, so that's really nice and always very helpful.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing, Dani. It looks like we're running out of time, but Dani, I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. So for those who are tuning in, how can they get in touch with you via Twitter if they would like to learn more about, you know, flipped classroom or back channeling?
Twitter is the best way to reach me, and my Twitter handle is @Miss Raskin, RASKIN. I love connecting with people on Twitter, so definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to have a conversation and help people any way that I can.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dani. And thanks again for all of you for tuning in to Teacher Tip Tuesday. If you have any questions about this interview, you can tweet at us. We are at RemindHQ on Twitter, or we're on Facebook at facebook.com/RemindHQ. And be sure to include the hashtag TeachTues, so that's TEACHTUES. If you would like to be interviewed or have your class featured, be sure to reach out to us on social media. I'm Clara Galan, and you can reach out to me on Twitter at Miss Clara Galan, signing off from Remind in San Francisco. Be sure to tune in next week for some more great teacher tips next Tuesday at 4 p.m. PST. Thanks.